In the executive office on the 25th floor of Reynolds Industries, Catherine Reynolds moved toward the man standing before her desk. The space between them closed to nothing as her fingers reached for the fabric at his throat. His tie had come loose, the knot askew from a morning spent rushing through subway turnstiles and elevator banks. She straightened it without asking permission, her hands precise and unhurried against the cheap polyester blend that had seen too many dry cleanings. James Sullivan froze. The scent of her perfume hit him first, something clean and expensive that smelled like money he would never have. His lungs refused to cooperate with the simple task of breathing. The air came fast and shallow, each inhale louder than the last in the silence of her office. Kate stepped back, one eyebrow raised. Amusement flickered across her face, or maybe curiosity. Her voice carried the kind of casual authority that made boardrooms go quiet. "Why are you breathing like that?" Heat crawled up James's neck. His mouth opened, but nothing came out except a sound that might have been the start of an apology. He managed two words through the tightness in his chest. "I'm sorry, Miss Reynolds." He backed toward the door, nodded once more like an idiot, and left. The hallway stretched empty in both directions. James stood there for a solid minute, heart hammering against his ribs hard enough to hurt. Above him, tucked into the corner where the ceiling met the wall, a security camera captured everything. The angle was perfect. Kate standing close enough to count his eyelashes, her hands on his tie. The moment his breathing changed, the small smile that crossed her face before he ran. By morning, the image would be everywhere. James woke at 6 to the alarm cutting through the darkness of his bedroom in Queens. He shut it off before the sound could travel down the hall to where Liam slept. The routine never changed. Shower while the coffee brewed. 2 pieces of toast with peanut butter arranged on a plate next to a glass of orange juice. Liam would stumble out 15 minutes later, dark hair sticking up in the back no matter how many times James tried to flatten it with water and a comb. 8 years old, 3rd grade, eyes the exact shade of green his mother had, which James tried not to think about too often because thinking led to remembering, and remembering led nowhere good. The divorce happened 5 years back when Jennifer decided their life was too small, too quiet, too predictable. She left for Seattle with a software engineer who drove a Tesla and never looked back. James signed the papers without argument and kept their son. The apartment was small but clean. 2 bedrooms, a living room with a couch that sagged in the middle, a kitchen table where Liam did homework while James cooked dinner. Rent ate $1,850 every month. Groceries took another $400. The tuition for PS 234 was free, but everything else, school supplies, winter coats that fit, shoes that didn't have holes, added up faster than his paycheck could cover. Reynolds Industries occupied a glass tower in Midtown where the elevators smelled like leather and wood polish. James worked on the 3rd floor in a corner desk surrounded by gray walls and fluorescent lights that hummed just loud enough to give him headaches by 3 o'clock. Administrative work. Filing reports, organizing schedules for executives who never learned his name, answering emails that could have been handled by anyone with a high school diploma and basic typing skills. $42,000 a year. Before taxes, it kept them fed and housed in one emergency away from disaster. James dropped Liam at school that morning, watched him run toward the entrance with his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He sat in Mrs. Faust Chen's borrowed Honda for an extra minute, telling himself the same thing he said every morning. As long as Liam was safe and happy, nothing else mattered. As long as his son had a roof and food and a father who showed up, they were doing fine. He arrived at the office 20 minutes later. Same desk, same stack of reports to file, same hum of lights overhead. Catherine Reynolds woke at 5:30 in her penthouse suite overlooking Central Park. She had already checked emails from 3 time zones before her feet touched the imported Italian marble floor. By 6, she was in her private gym with a personal trainer who knew better than to make small talk. By 7, she sat across from her executive assistant reviewing the day's schedule over black coffee that cost more per pound than most people spent on groceries in a week. 37 years old, CEO of Reynolds Industries for 6 years. Sharp enough to make grown men stumble over their presentations, efficient enough to cut meeting times in half. The kind of woman who could silence a room with a glance. Her grandfather had built the company in 1952. Her father had expanded it. She inherited the whole thing at 31 when her father had a stroke that left him unable to speak clearly enough to lead board meetings. The company expected it. Her family expected it. It was as inevitable as her eye color or the shape of her hands. What was also expected, apparently, was marriage. Her assistant set down a tablet with a reminder about dinner. Another arrangement her mother had made. Another potential suitor. Another man with the right last name and the right connections, and absolutely nothing that made Kate want to spend more than 5 minutes in his company. She looked at the reminder for 3 seconds, then swiped it away. Cancel it. Her assistant hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Your mother specifically requested, then tell her I specifically declined. The assistant left without another word. Kate leaned back in her chair and stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched below her, endless and indifferent. She had built her entire life around control. Every decision calculated, every risk measured, every outcome predicted 3 moves ahead. But her family, the board, the shareholders, they all wanted the same thing. Stability, image, a wedding announcement that would look good in the business section and make investors feel confident about leadership continuity. She was tired of it. That afternoon, someone called in sick on the administrative floor. James got pulled to deliver an urgent file to the executive level because he was the only one available, and no one else wanted to make the trip upstairs. He took the elevator to 25, clutching the folder against his chest like it might protect him from something. The hallway was different up here, quieter. The carpet was thicker. The air smelled faintly of leather and fresh flowers. He knocked on the door to the CEO's office and waited. Come in. The voice was calm, controlled, utterly certain that whoever stood on the other side would obey. James opened the door and stepped inside. Kate Reynolds was standing by the window, her back to him. She turned when he entered, and for a moment he forgot why he was there. She had just finished a meeting. He could see the tension still lingering in her posture, the way her shoulders sat too high, the tightness around her mouth. James crossed the room quickly, set the folder on her desk, and nodded. The quarterly report you requested, Miss Reynolds. She glanced at the folder but did not reach for it. Instead, her eyes shifted to him, and the weight of her attention made his pulse quicken. He was already turning to leave when she spoke. Wait. He stopped, turned back. She was looking at him now, her gaze sharp and focused in a way that made everything else in the room disappear. She stepped closer. He did not move because his body had apparently forgotten how. Her fingers brushed the fabric of his tie and began straightening it with the kind of efficiency that suggested she had done this 1,000 times before for 1,000 different men in 1,000 different contexts. The knot had come loose. He rushed getting dressed that morning because Liam could not find his math homework and the subway was delayed and everything was always 5 minutes behind schedule. He had not noticed. Kate noticed. Her hands moved slowly, adjusting the knot with care that felt almost intimate. She was close enough that he could see the pale blue of her eyes, close enough that her perfume filled his lungs, close enough that he forgot where he was supposed to be and who he was supposed to be and why any of this mattered. His breathing changed, faster, shallower. He tried to control it, but his body refused to cooperate. And then she was stepping back with that raised eyebrow and that question that would change everything. The security footage showed all of it, the way she moved into his space, the way his hands hung useless at his sides, the way she smiled, small and brief but unmistakably there, before he turned and practically ran from her office. James arrived at work the next morning and knew immediately that something had shifted. People glanced at him, then looked away. Conversations stopped when he walked past. He sat down at his desk and opened his computer. A notification popped up from the company's internal messaging system. Someone he barely knew had sent him a link. Hey, isn't that you? He clicked it. The photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. Kate standing too close, her hands on his tie. The lighting made it look more intimate than it had been, made it look like something it was not. Below the image, comments multiplied faster than he could read them. CEO has a boyfriend? Who is this guy? Probably some CEO's son or something. Bet he's rich. Lucky bastard. James closed the message. His hands were shaking. This was not supposed to happen. He was invisible. He had always been invisible. Now everyone was looking at him and none of them understood. None of them knew he was just a guy who delivered files and lived in Queens and could barely afford his son's winter coat. He spent the rest of the day trying to ignore it. By afternoon, he knew he had to do something. He sent a message to Kate's assistant requesting a meeting. The reply came an hour later. 9:00 p.m. tonight, 25th floor. Private. James told Liam he had to work late. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch him without asking too many questions. James drove back to the office after dark, the city lights blurring past his window. He took the elevator up to the 25th floor and stepped into the empty hallway. The building was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. Kate's office door was open. She sat at her desk, still in the same clothes from earlier. She looked up when he entered, and her expression gave nothing away. "Close the door." He did. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit," he sat. She did not waste time with pleasantries or small talk or anything that might make this easier. "You've seen the photo." "Yes." "And you want to apologize." James nodded. The words came out in a rush, too fast and too honest. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I can request a transfer, or I can resign if that's easier for the company." Kate leaned back in her chair, studying him with the same intensity she probably used to evaluate quarterly earnings reports. Her fingers drummed once against the armrest, then stopped. "That's not necessary." James blinked. "I don't understand." She stood and walked around the desk, leaning against the front edge. The position put her closer to him, close enough that he had to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact. Her voice stayed calm and matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a budget proposal instead of whatever this was. "I have a problem, James. My family has been pressuring me to get married for the past 2 years. They think it will stabilize the company's image, make me look more reliable, more traditional, more like the kind of CEO that investors trust with their money." James did not know what to say, so he said nothing. Kate continued, her gaze never leaving his face. "I've refused every arrangement they've made, but the pressure isn't stopping. If anything, it's getting worse. The board mentions it in every quarterly review. My mother calls twice a week with suggestions. Last month, a shareholder asked during a public meeting whether I planned to marry soon because leadership continuity was a concern." She pulled a folder from her desk drawer and set it in front of him. The weight of it suggested multiple pages. Legal documents, contracts. 6 months. You and I will appear together publicly. Events, dinners, company functions. To everyone else, we'll look like a couple. A serious relationship that suggests stability and future commitment. James stared at the folder like it might explode. His brain struggled to process what she was actually suggesting. "You want me to pretend to be your boyfriend, and?" "Yes." "Why me, Kate's smile was brief and humorless. "Because you're not part of my world. You won't use this for leverage or publicity or anything beyond what's written in the contract. You already look the part, as evidenced by that photo. And honestly, you seem like someone who keeps his word." She opened the folder and pointed to a number on the first page. The figure had 4 digits before the decimal point. James's throat went dry. $12,000 per month. That was more than he made in 3 months. That was Liam's private school tuition for an entire year. That was a down payment on a house in a neighborhood where his son could play outside without James worrying every second he was out of sight. That was the difference between drowning and breathing. James shook his head. The words came from somewhere deep and honest, from the part of him that remembered what his own father had taught him about integrity and self-respect and not selling yourself for money no matter how badly you needed it. "I can't. I have a son. He shouldn't see his father living a lie." Kate reached into the folder and pulled out a check. She held it up so he could see the amount written in careful handwriting. $25,000, made out to James Sullivan. "This is yours if you sign. It covers 1 full year of private school tuition for Liam. It covers the security deposit on a better apartment. It covers everything you've been worrying about at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep because the numbers don't add up and you don't know how you're going to make it through another month." James stared at the check through the clear window of the folder. His hands curled into fists on his lap. Kate's voice softened, just slightly. "I'm not forcing you, but I know you need this, and I need a way out. This is mutually beneficial. We both get something we want." James looked up at her. Her expression had not changed, but there was something in her eyes that looked almost human, almost vulnerable, almost like she was asking for help instead of offering a business transaction. "Think about it. You have until Friday to decide." She stood and walked back around her desk, sitting down and returning her attention to her computer. The meeting was over. The dismissal was clear. James stood and left without another word. That night, he sat on the edge of Liam's bed watching his son sleep. Liam's face was peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. One arm thrown over his head, his breathing slow and even. James thought about the contract sitting in his messenger bag. He thought about the life he could give his son if he said yes. Private school with small class sizes and art programs and science labs. A neighborhood where they did not hear sirens every night. Savings in case something went wrong. Security, stability, everything a good father was supposed to provide. He thought about what it would cost. 12 months of lying. 12 months of pretending to be someone he was not. 12 months of standing next to a woman who lived in a different universe and smiling for cameras and hoping nobody saw through the act. He thought about the kind of man he wanted Liam to grow up to be. Honest, hardworking. Someone who did not compromise his principles for money, but he also thought about the kind of life he wanted Liam to have. Safe, secure, full of opportunities that James never got. By Friday morning, James had made his decision. He walked into Kate's office at 4:45 and set the signed contract on her desk. She looked at it, then at him. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You're sure?" "For Liam, yes." Kate nodded once. She pulled the check from her desk drawer and slid it across to him. "Good, we start next week." James picked up the check and folded it carefully into his wallet. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "One more thing. This only works if you can convince people it's real. Can you do that?" James met her eyes. He did not know the answer, but he nodded anyway because walking out now would mean admitting he had made a mistake, and he could not afford mistakes. "Yes." Kate's lips curved into the faintest smile. "We'll see." The clothing arrived on Tuesday morning. A stylist showed up at James's apartment with 3 garment bags and a measuring tape, her expression polite but efficient. She took his measurements, made notes on a tablet, and left within 20 minutes. 2 days later, the suits arrived, tailored, expensive, the kind of fabric that felt wrong against his skin because he knew how much it cost per yard. There were shirts too, ties and colors he would never have chosen for himself. A watch that looked like it belonged in a display case at Tiffany's. James stood in his bedroom, staring at the boxes, wondering if this was what selling out felt like. Liam wandered in, still in his pajamas, and poked at one of the suit jackets hanging on the closet door. "Why do you have fancy clothes, Dad?" James did not know how to answer that question honestly, so he lied. "Work stuff." Liam shrugged and went back to his cereal. The ease of the lie made James's stomach turn. The training sessions started that same week. Kate scheduled them for the evenings after Liam was asleep. James would drive back to the office, take the elevator to the 25th floor, and meet her in the empty conference room. She was direct. No easing into it, no gentle introductions, no acknowledgement that this was strange for both of them. "Stand next to me." James stepped closer. Kate shook her head. "Not close enough. Closer." He moved another step. She reached out and pulled him by the arm until their shoulders were nearly touching, until he could feel the heat of her body next to his. "This is where you stand, not a foot away like you're my assistant. You're supposed to be my boyfriend. Act like it." James's jaw tightened, but he nodded. She stepped back and studied him with the kind of analytical focus that probably made junior executives break out in a cold sweat. "When we're in public, you don't look at the ground. You don't fold your arms. You stand tall. You look people in the eye." "I know how to stand." Kate's gaze sharpened. "Do you? Because every time someone looks at you, you shrink. That won't work. They'll see through this in 5 seconds if you keep doing that." James said nothing because she was right, and they both knew it. She moved on to the next part without waiting for acknowledgement. "Now hold my hand." He hesitated. She extended her hand toward him, waiting. He reached out and took it. His grip was stiff, formal, exactly like shaking hands at a business meeting. Kate pulled her hand back. Not like that, like you've done this 100 times before, like it's natural. She reached for his hand again. This time she laced her fingers through his and held on. Her hand was smaller than his, her grip firm, but not tight. She looked up at him, and for a moment he forgot they were in an empty conference room, pretending at something that was not real. Feel the difference? He nodded. She let go and stepped back. Good. Now relax, he tried. His shoulders loosened slightly. His breathing evened out. She watched him for a moment, then nodded. Better. We'll keep working on it. They practiced for an hour, standing together without looking like strangers, walking side by side without leaving too much space between them. How to position himself when photographers were nearby. She corrected him when he slouched, when he looked away too quickly, when his face betrayed the discomfort he was trying to hide. By the end of the session, James's head was spinning. He drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Over the next 2 weeks, they ran through it again and again. Kate noticed things he did not think anyone would see. The way his watch was his father's, the leather strap worn soft with age, the crack across the top of his phone screen, the fact that he took the subway because he did not own a car. The exact time he left every Wednesday night because Liam's bedtime was 8:45 and James was never late for it. She said nothing about any of it, but James could tell she was filing away the information like data points in a larger analysis. She was starting to see him as a person instead of just an employee, and that made everything more complicated. The first public event was a charity gala. Black tie, 200 guests. The kind of room where every conversation mattered and every glance was calculated. James stood in front of the mirror in his apartment, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. The suit fit perfectly. The shoes were polished to a high shine. He looked like someone else entirely. Liam knocked on the doorframe and peered in. "You look like a prince, Dad." James managed a small smile. "Thanks, buddy." "Are you going to see Miss Kate?" James's hand stilled on his tie. He had mentioned Kate once casually when Liam asked why he was working late so often. He had not expected his son to remember. "Yeah, it's a work thing." Liam grinned. "She's really pretty." James ruffled Liam's hair gently, avoiding the question implied in his son's smile. "Brush your teeth before bed, okay?" "Okay." The gala was held in a hotel ballroom downtown. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings 3 stories high. White tablecloths covered tables set with china that probably cost more per plate than James made in a week. Waiters circled with champagne on silver trays. James walked in and immediately felt like he had stepped into the wrong building. Kate was waiting near the entrance, wearing a black gown that looked like it had been designed specifically for her. She saw him and walked over, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. "You clean up well." James did not know how to respond, so he just nodded. She slipped her arm through his, the movement smooth and practiced, like they had done this 1,000 times before. "Remember what I told you. Stand tall, smile when people talk to you. Don't let go of me unless I tell you to." He nodded again. They walked into the ballroom together. The room was enormous. Hundreds of people in tailored suits and designer dresses, all talking and laughing and pretending they cared about whatever cause they were raising money for tonight. James felt every pair of eyes that turned toward them, some curious, some appraising, some dismissive. Kate leaned in slightly, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Breathe, you're doing fine." He was not doing fine. His heart was pounding, his palms were sweating, but he forced himself to keep walking, to keep his head up, to not look like he was drowning in front of 200 strangers who could smell fear like sharks smell blood. They stopped near the center of the room, and within seconds, someone approached. A man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. He extended a hand toward Kate. "Evelyn, good to see you." She shook his hand. "Richard, I didn't expect to see you here." Richard Morrison. James recognized the name from one of their training sessions. CEO of Morrison & Associates, a competing firm. Not a friend. Richard's gaze shifted to James, and the assessment was slow and deliberate, like he was appraising a piece of furniture for quality and value. "And who's this?" Kate's grip on James's arm tightened slightly. "This is James Sullivan, my boyfriend." Richard raised an eyebrow. Boyfriend, how unexpected. There was something in his tone that made James's stomach twist. Not quite mockery, not quite disbelief. Something worse, pity. Kate's smile did not waver. James works in strategic project coordination. It was a lie, a small one. They had agreed beforehand that his actual title, administrative assistant, would raise too many questions. Strategic project coordination sounded better. Sounded like someone who belonged in this room. Richard nodded slowly. Strategic projects. Interesting. He did not sound interested, he sounded skeptical. The conversation continued for another few minutes. Richard asked polite questions that felt like interrogations. James answered when he had to, but mostly he just stood there trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. When Richard finally excused himself, Kate turned to James. Her expression was calm, but he could see the tension in her jaw. Ignore him. James nodded, but the words were already lodged in his chest. He did not belong here. Richard knew it. Everyone in this room probably knew it. By the time they left, James's face hurt from forcing expressions that were not real. They rode back to the office in silence. Kate's driver dropped James off at his car. Before he got out, she looked at him. You did well tonight. James shook his head. I didn't. You had to cover for me the entire time. You showed up. That's what mattered. He did not believe her, but he nodded anyway. He got out of the car and drove home, the weight of the evening pressing down on him like something physical. He walked into his apartment and found Liam asleep on the couch, Mrs. Chen reading a magazine in the chair nearby. James picked up his son, carried him to bed, and whispered something he hoped Liam could not hear. I'm sorry, buddy. This is all for you. I hope one day you understand. He stood there for a long time watching his son sleep, wondering what kind of man sold pieces of himself for $12,000 a month and whether that man was someone his son could be proud of. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and sirens and the endless noise of 8 million people trying to survive. Inside, James stood in the dark and tried to convince himself he had made the right choice. Over the next 3 months, the pattern became routine. Events twice a week. A shareholders' dinner where Thomas Hendricks studied James with open skepticism before asking pointed questions about strategic project coordination. A Broadway opening sponsored by Reynolds Industries where photographers captured Kate's hand resting on James's arm, the image making the art section the next morning with speculation about the mysterious man at the CEO's side. A spring fundraiser for a children's hospital where Liam asked why his dad went to fancy parties so much, and Mrs. Chen started watching James with knowing eyes that made him feel transparent. After each event, Kate's driver dropped him home. The conversations in the back seat stretched longer than necessary. Week 8, she asked about Liam's favorite subjects. Week 10, James asked about her childhood and learned she spent most of it at boarding schools, where making friends meant showing weakness. Week 13, they laughed together for the first time over something neither of them could remember later. But the sound of it felt genuine in a way nothing else had. The text messages evolved, started professional, event details and timing requirements. By month 2, she was asking how Liam's science fair went. Month 3, she sent a photo of a Lego set she saw in a store window, with a note that it might interest an 8-year-old who loved building things. Month 4, good morning texts became routine, small affirmations that someone was thinking about him before the day started. James felt the shift happening inside him, like ice cracking under pressure. Initially, this was a job to endure for 12 months. By month 2, he caught himself thinking she was not what he expected. Sharp and funny when her guard dropped, capable of kindness that cost her nothing but seemed to mean something anyway. Month 3, he looked forward to seeing her, which felt dangerous. Month 4, he was forgetting this was fake, and that realization kept him awake at night. Kate offered to drive him home one evening after a late client dinner. He agreed because he was tired, and the thought of the subway made his bones ache. She pulled up in front of his building and turned off the engine. The silence stretched between them, comfortable in a way that made James nervous. The words came out before he could stop them. Do you want to come in for a minute? He did not know why he said it, maybe because pretending had become exhausting. Maybe because he wanted her to see the part of his life that was real, the part that existed before $12,000 a month and tailored suits. Kate looked at the building, then at him. Sure. They walked up the stairs to the second floor. James unlocked the door and stepped inside. The living room was small, a couch that had seen better days, a coffee table covered in Liam's drawings of rocket ships and planets, toys stacked neatly in a bin by the wall. Liam was supposed to be asleep, but the moment he heard the door open, he came running out of his room. "Dad!" He stopped when he saw Kate. His eyes went wide. A shy smile spread across his face as he looked between his father and the woman he had heard about but never met. "Hi, Ann." Kate smiled, and it was different from the smiles James had seen her use at events. Softer, real. She crouched down to his level. "Hi, you must be Liam." Liam nodded. "Are you my dad's friend?" "Something like that." Liam looked at James with a question in his eyes. "Is she staying for a while?" James glanced at Kate, unsure. She nodded. "Just for a little bit, buddy, but you need to finish your homework first." Liam groaned but ran back to his room. James gestured toward the couch. Kate sat, and he disappeared into the kitchen, returning with 2 glasses of water. He handed one to her and sat on the opposite end, leaving space between them like a safety zone. They did not talk much, just sat in the quiet while the sounds of the city filtered through the windows. After a few minutes, Liam came back out, a math worksheet in his hand. "Dad, I don't get this one." James set his glass down and leaned over to look at the problem. He explained it slowly, breaking the concept into smaller pieces, walking Liam through each step without impatience. His voice carried the kind of patience that only comes from repetition, from months and years of helping with homework every night after dinner. "Okay, so if you have 24 cookies and want to share with 6 friends, how many does each person get?" Liam's pencil moved across the paper, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. When he got it right, James ruffled his hair gently. "Good job." Kate watched them. She did not say anything, but something in her expression shifted. She was seeing James in a way she had not before. Not as the man who stood awkwardly at events or the employee who needed coaching. Just as a father. Tired, patient, showing up every single night no matter what else was happening in his life. The way he looked at Liam carried a devotion so complete it made everything else seem trivial. When Liam finished the problem, he looked up at Kate with the kind of directness only children possess. "Do you like Legos?" She blinked. "I've never really thought about it." Liam's face lit up like she had just offered him the greatest gift imaginable. "I have a really cool set. Do you want to see?" Before James could intervene, Liam grabbed Kate's hand and pulled her toward his room. She glanced back at James with a question in her eyes. He shrugged, half amused, half apologetic. She followed Liam into his room. James stayed on the couch, listening to the sound of his son's voice, explaining the intricacies of the space station he had built. Kate's responses were quieter, but he could hear genuine interest in her tone. 20 minutes later, she emerged. Liam was behind her, yawning. "Time for bed." Liam did not argue. He hugged James, then looked at Kate with hope written across his face. "Will you come back?" Kate crouched down again. "Maybe." Liam smiled and disappeared into his room. James walked Kate to the door. She stepped into the hallway, then turned back. "He's wonderful." "Yeah, he is." She looked at him for a moment longer, something unspoken passing between them. Then she nodded and walked toward the stairs. James closed the door and leaned against it, chest tight with something he could not name. The next day, a package arrived. Inside was an expensive Lego set, the NASA Mars rover that Liam had been staring at in store windows for months. The note was in Kate's handwriting. "For the astronaut." Kay, Liam's excited shout, brought Mrs. Chen from next door to see what the commotion was about. James stared at the note, his chest tightening in a way that felt dangerous. He called Kate that night after Liam was asleep. "You didn't have to do that." Her voice came through the phone, soft and unbothered. "I know, but he mentioned wanting it." "Thank you." The silence stretched between them, loaded with things neither of them was ready to say. Finally, Kate spoke again. "You're a good father, James." He did not know how to respond to that, so he just said good night and hung up. But the words stayed with him long after the call ended. Summer arrived. Kate paid for Liam to attend a science camp at Columbia that cost more than James made in a month. He insisted on paying her back from his contract money. She refused, called it a gift, and he was too uncomfortable with charity to keep arguing. Liam came home talking about rockets and physics and space stations with an enthusiasm that made every uncomfortable moment of the past few months feel worth it. The media started noticing. An article appeared in Forbes with a headline that made James's stomach turn. Reynolds Industries CEO quietly dating company employee. The piece speculated about propriety and company policies and whether this was appropriate behavior for someone in her position. Kate's PR team issued a statement that her personal life was private, but the damage was done. People were paying attention now. James overheard a conversation in the break room during month 7. Two co-workers talking while he stood just outside the door, frozen with a coffee cup in his hand. The woman's voice carried skepticism and something meaner. "I heard she's only with him to avoid some arranged marriage her family set up." The man laughed. "Obviously. You think someone like her would actually date someone like him? He's just a placeholder until something real comes along." "Smart, though. Get paid to pretend for a few months. Easy money." "I'd do it, too." James stood there, coffee growing cold in his hand, their laughter echoing in his ears. He walked away before they could see him. Spent the rest of the day unable to shake the word. Placeholder. Like he was a bookmark holding a spot until the real story started. Like he was temporary and disposable, and exactly what everyone suspected. Hired help playing a role. That night he looked at himself in the mirror. Same face, same hands. The expensive suit did not change who he was underneath. He thought about Kate at events, laughing with board members while he stood silently beside her like expensive furniture. Everyone saw what he had felt all along. He did not belong. Diane Harper cornered him at a company event a week later. Kate's CFO had the kind of eyes that missed nothing and the friendship that allowed her to ignore corporate hierarchy when it mattered. "You okay?" "Fine." "You're a terrible liar. What happened?" James deflected, but Diane persisted with the patience of someone who had spent years extracting truth from people trained to hide it. Finally, he cracked. "Why does she keep me around? We're from completely different worlds." Diane studied him for a long moment. "Because she's happier than I've seen her in years. That's why." James did not believe it. Could not let himself believe it. September brought Marcus Whitmore. Kate's mother arranged a casual dinner at Daniel, one of those restaurants where reservations required calling 6 months in advance, and the sommelier remembered your preferences. Victoria invited Marcus without mentioning to Kate that she planned to orchestrate an introduction. Kate brought James anyway, a power move that left her mother momentarily speechless when they walked in together. Marcus was 42, tall and distinguished, salt and pepper hair, eyes that carried the kind of sadness that comes from real loss. His wife Elena had died 2 years earlier from ovarian cancer that spread too fast for the treatments to catch. He had built Venture Sphere from nothing. Started in a garage like every other tech cliche and turned it into a company worth $600 million. Polite, intelligent, the kind of man who saw through social games immediately and chose not to play them. Victoria's intentions were transparent. She had set this up as a Marcus and Kate introduction, a chance for two successful people from appropriate backgrounds to discover mutual interest. Kate arriving with James destroyed that plan, but Victoria recovered quickly, her smile tight as she gestured to the table. "I didn't realize you were joining us, James." Kate's voice carried steel wrapped in politeness. "James is my boyfriend, Mother. Of course he's joining us." The seating arrangement became awkward. Marcus, Kate, James, Victoria around a table meant for intimate conversation that had become something else entirely. Marcus handled it with grace, asking James about his work and actually listening to the answers. He shared stories about his own beginnings, working construction to pay for community college before the tech industry noticed him. "I started in my garage. Literally. My neighbors thought I was running a meth lab because I was in there at all hours with chemical compounds." The ease of his manner made James like him, which somehow made everything worse. This was a good man, someone who understood struggle and loss, someone who would treat Kate well, someone who belonged in her world in ways James never would. They stepped outside for air while Kate argued with her mother inside. Marcus lit a cigarette, offered one to James, who declined. They stood in silence for a moment, watching traffic crawl past on the Upper East Side. Marcus broke the quiet. "You're Kate's boyfriend?" James nodded. Marcus studied him with eyes that had seen enough of life to recognize truth from performance. She looks at you like you're real. Don't take that lightly. James frowned. What do you mean? I had that once, someone who looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Lost it. If you have it now, hold on to it. Most people spend their whole lives searching for what you two have. He flicked ash from his cigarette and walked back inside before James could respond or explain that what they had was a contract with an expiration date, that the way Kate looked at him was part of the performance, that none of this was real no matter how real it felt. Inside, Victoria was making her pitch to Marcus, unaware that Kate stood in the hallway listening. She's wonderful, isn't she? And your companies would complement each other perfectly. The synergies alone, Marcus cut her off with the kind of polite firmness that came from years of board meetings. Mrs. Reynolds, with respect, I'm not looking for a business merger disguised as marriage. But surely you see the benefits. I see that your daughter is in love with someone else. That's what I see. Victoria fell silent. Kate stood in the hallway, hearing every word, feeling something crack open in her chest. Marcus saw what she had been denying for months. The performance had become something else, and she had no idea when it happened or how to stop it. October brought the annual Investor Gala. 400 guests at the Rainbow Room with views of Manhattan stretching in every direction. Richard Morrison was there again, circling like a shark who smelled blood. James had been distant since overhearing the break room conversation, the word placeholder echoing in his head every time he looked at Kate. Richard approached during cocktail hour, drink in hand and smugness written across his face. Still together, I see. How? Enduring. Kate's voice stayed cool despite the tension radiating through her shoulders. Did you have a point, Richard? No point, just observing. Temporary arrangements usually don't last very long. He looked directly at James and the message was clear. Enjoy it while it lasts, because you and I both know what this really is. James excused himself, stepped onto the balcony where October wind cut through his expensive suit. The city stretched below, lights flickering like stars that would never be close enough to touch. He gripped the railing hard enough that his knuckles went white. Kate followed 5 minutes later. James. He did not turn around. The words came out harder than he intended. He's right, isn't he? This is all temporary, all fake. She stepped closer. It was, at first. He finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in her eyes made everything worse because it looked real, and he could not afford for it to be real. What does that mean? It means it's not anymore, at least not for me. James shook his head, pain and fear and anger mixing into something he could not control. You don't have to say that. The contract's clear. 12 months, then we're done. I'm not saying it because of the contract. Then why? Because you feel sorry for me? Because the poor guy from Queens makes you feel better about yourself? No, because everyone in that room knows the truth. I don't belong here. You're what? CEO, third-generation wealth, penthouse overlooking Central Park. I'm an administrative assistant with a GED who lives in a 2-bedroom apartment and takes the subway to work. She reached for his arm, but he pulled away. You think I care about that? You should. Your mother does. Your board does. Hell, even Marcus Whitmore could see it at dinner. I'm a placeholder, something to keep you occupied until a real option comes along. You're not. He cut her off, the words tumbling out with all the poison he had been swallowing for months. I heard them. At work, laughing about how easy it is, how smart you are, paying someone to pretend for a few months. That's all this is. Easy money and a good performance. Her voice cracked, and the sound of it hit him like a physical blow. Is that what you think? That I've been pretending? Haven't you? No, not for months now. Every event, every dinner, every text message, that's been real for me. I thought it was becoming real for you too. He wanted to believe her, wanted it so badly he could taste it. But the voices in the break room kept echoing, placeholder, temporary, easy money. People like him did not end up with people like her except in contracts and fairy tales. And he had stopped believing in fairy tales when his wife left him for someone who could offer her a bigger life. We live in different worlds, Kate. Her eyes were wet now, tears she was too proud to let fall. I don't care. I do. Liam does. He asks about you every day. He's getting attached. And when this ends, because it will end, he'll be heartbroken. I can't do that to him. I won't. It doesn't have to end. Yes, it does, because I can't do this anymore. I can't stand next to you pretending we're something we're not while everyone watches and judges and sees exactly what I see every time I look in the mirror. I'm not enough for you. I'll never be enough. He turned and walked back inside, leaving her alone on the balcony with the wind and the city and the truth he could not face. She did not follow. The evening continued around them, champagne flowing and conversations humming, but something fundamental had broken and neither of them knew how to fix it. That night, James lay awake staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. 3 texts from Kate, each one a knife he refused to acknowledge. The last one simply read, "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you." He read it 3 times, did not respond, turned off his phone and closed his eyes, but sleep would not come. He knew he was falling in love with her, had known for months, also knew it was impossible, that the gap between their lives was too wide, that this could only end in pain. 4 weeks passed. They attended events together, maintaining the professional distance of coworkers forced to collaborate on a project neither wanted. Kate stopped texting good morning. James missed it, hated himself for missing it. The silence between them grew heavy with things neither would say. During lunch on a Tuesday in November, James saw the headline, "Business Insider, trending on every financial news site. Reynolds Industries to announce strategic partnership with VentureSphere." The subheading made his stomach drop. CEO Catherine Reynolds and Marcus Whitmore, engagement expected. The article was detailed, a merger valued at $500 million. Expansion into Asian markets, strategic synergy. The engagement announcement was scheduled for the end of the month, a gala where Kate would formally introduce Marcus as her fiancé and future husband. James set his phone down, picked it up, read the article again, then a third time as if the words might change. This was always the plan. He was always temporary. The contract ended in 2 months anyway. This just accelerated the timeline, made official what everyone already knew. He felt stupid for believing anything else. Kate called that evening. He let it go to voicemail. She called again an hour later, ignored. The third time he answered because refusing felt childish. "We need to talk." Her voice was tight, controlled, the tone she used in board meetings when someone questioned her judgment. James kept his own voice flat. "There's nothing to talk about. Contract ends soon anyway. This just moves the timeline up." "James, listen. It's fine, Miss Reynolds. Really, this was always temporary, just business, like you said." "James, thank you for the opportunity. I'll have my lawyer review the exit terms." He hung up before she could respond. Sat in his apartment while Liam did homework at the kitchen table, the November rain streaking the windows. Everything felt broken in ways he could not explain and did not want to examine. Kate sat in her office, staring at her phone. She had not expected it to hurt this much. Diane walked in without knocking, took one look at her face and sat down. "You look miserable." "He won't listen." "Did you tell him the truth?" "What truth?" Diane's voice was gentle but firm. "That you're in love with him." Kate said nothing. The silence was admission enough. Diane stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city that had been Kate's entire world for so long, it felt like a prison. "You've spent your entire life doing what everyone else wanted. Your father, the board, your mother, the shareholders. Maybe it's time to do something for yourself." She left without waiting for a response. Kate sat alone in the dark, thinking about a man who made her laugh and challenged her assumptions and looked at her like she was just Kate instead of Catherine Reynolds, CEO. Thinking about a boy who showed her his Lego space stations and asked if she would come back. Thinking about what she was willing to lose and what she could not afford to keep pretending did not matter. The next morning, James submitted a transfer request to Human Resources. Reynolds Industries had a regional office in Pittsburgh, 6 hours from New York City. Smaller operation, quieter. An opening for operations coordinator at the same salary. He applied. The approval came within 3 days. HR did not question it. Everyone assumed he and Kate had broken up, too polite to ask directly. Telling Liam was harder than facing Kate's silence. James sat his son down on a Thursday evening, trying to find words that would make this make sense. "Buddy, we're going to move. New city, New adventure. Liam's face fell like the ground had dropped out from under him. But I like my school and my friends. You'll make new friends. The school there is really good too. Liam did not look convinced. His eyes were too old for 8, carrying understanding that childhood should not require. Will Miss Kate come visit? James's heart broke cleanly in half. I don't think so, buddy. She's very busy with work. Did you make her mad? No, it's just complicated. Liam's eyes filled with tears. He was too proud to let fall. I don't want to leave. James pulled him close, held him while he cried, whispered apologies into his hair. That night after Liam fell asleep, James sat at the kitchen table staring at the check from Kate. The final payment, $50,000, enough to cover the move, the security deposit on a Pittsburgh apartment, 3 months of expenses while he settled. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like payment for services rendered, cold and transactional, and exactly what this had always been. He started packing. Evenings after work, boxes stacking in the living room. Liam helped silently, wrapping his toys with care, asking questions James did not know how to answer. Mrs. Chen noticed. You're really leaving? Fresh start. Good for both of us. She studied him with eyes that had seen too much life to be fooled by easy lies. Running away, you mean? James did not argue. She was not wrong. December arrived. 2 weeks before Christmas, James submitted his resignation, effective January 2nd. He would use his remaining vacation days. Last day in the office would be Friday. Co-workers threw a small goodbye party, cake from the grocery store, well wishes, handshakes from people who still thought his relationship with Kate had been real. Nobody asked what happened. The assumption of a breakup hung unspoken in the air. James boxed his desk. 5 years of administrative work fit into 2 cardboard boxes. Everything he had built here could be carried out in one trip. The company Christmas party was mandatory. James showed up, stayed for 45 minutes, left without saying goodbye. Kate was across the room surrounded by executives. Their eyes met once. She looked away first. He drove home through December rain, Liam asleep in the back seat, everything feeling broken and irreparable, and exactly what he deserved for believing a contract could become something real. The week after Christmas, Kate sat alone in her penthouse with a contract spread across her coffee table. $500 million in neat legal language. The partnership with VentureSphere. The expansion into Asian markets. The engagement announcement scheduled for January 15th at a gala that would determine the trajectory of the next decade. Her board was thrilled. Her mother had stopped calling twice a day to nag about marriage prospects. Everything was falling into place exactly as it should. She felt nothing. Diane Harper walked into Kate's office on December 28th without bothering to knock. The privilege of friendship and 6 years of working together meant she could ignore corporate protocol when necessary. She set a cup of coffee on the desk and dropped into the chair across from Kate. You look terrible. Kate did not bother denying it. Thanks. When did you last sleep? Some. Diane's expression made it clear she did not believe that lie. When did you last eat a real meal? Kate could not remember. Diane leaned forward, voice dropping to the tone she used when discussing something more important than quarterly earnings. Talk to me. The words came out before Kate could stop them. I can't stop thinking about him. James, Kate nodded. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I drive past his apartment sometimes. Pathetic, right? Diane's voice was gentle. It's called being human. It's called being stupid. He's gone. Moving to Pittsburgh next week. So go after him. Kate shook her head, the movement sharp and definitive. I can't. Engagement announcement in 2 weeks. The board is counting on this deal. The shareholders... Diane cut her off. Screw the board. Kate looked up, shocked. Diane never said things like that. She was the CFO, the voice of financial reason, the person who lived and breathed quarterly reports and shareholder value. Diane continued, her voice carrying weight that went beyond numbers and projections. You've given everything to this company. Your 20s, to your 30s, every relationship you might have had. What has it given you back besides money and a title that makes you miserable? This deal secures our Asian expansion. The company will survive without it. Question is, will you? Kate did not have an answer for that. Diane stood, walked to the window where Manhattan spread below them like a promise that had never been kept. You know what I see? A woman who built an $800 million company. A woman who saved 3,000 jobs during the recession when every other firm our size was laying people off. A woman who's brilliant and capable and absolutely miserable because she spent her entire life doing what everyone else wanted. Kate's chest tightened. The board needs this. You're in love with him, and unless I'm completely wrong, he's in love with you too. He won't even talk to me. Diane turned from the window. Because he thinks you chose Marcus. Chose the money and the merger and everything he's not. Did you? Kate stared at the contract on her desk. The numbers were right. The strategy was sound. The logic was irrefutable. Everything a good CEO should value. She thought about Marcus, kind, intelligent, a good man who would make a decent partner. Zero chemistry, zero fire. Zero moments where she forgot to breathe because someone looked at her like she mattered more than the company name behind her. She thought about James explaining math problems to his son with infinite patience. About Liam pulling her into his room to show her Lego spaceships. About text messages that said good morning like they meant something. About the way James looked at her on that balcony in October, hurt and angry and real in ways nobody else had been in years. Diane's voice was quiet now. One day, you'll be old. You'll look back. And you'll ask yourself if you were brave. Make sure the answer is yes. She left without waiting for a response. Kate sat alone in her office, surrounded by glass and steel and the trappings of success that felt increasingly hollow. She picked up her phone and made a call. David, I need you to draft something for me. 3 days later, Thomas Grant appeared in Kate's office with a folder that looked too thin to contain anything important. Her head of security had been with Reynolds Industries for 12 years, ex-FBI with the kind of attention to detail that made him invaluable. Ms. Reynolds, we completed the investigation into the October photo leak. Kate frowned. I thought we closed that case. We did, but I kept digging on my own time, found something you need to see. He opened the folder and spread the contents across her desk. Email trails, payment records, bank transfers. The photo had been leaked by Richard Morrison's assistant, who had paid off a Reynolds Industries security guard for the camera footage. The goal was simple: embarrass Kate, make the relationship look unprofessional, raise questions about her judgment with the board. Kate stared at the evidence, anger building cold and sharp in her chest. She picked up her phone. Richard, we need to talk. Now. She met him at his office that evening, 6th floor of a building in the financial district where Morrison and Associates had operated for 30 years. Richard sat behind his desk, looking smug and comfortable, like he owned the world and everyone in it. Kate threw the folder on his desk, papers scattered across the polished mahogany. Care to explain? Richard barely glanced at them. Business is business, Catherine. Sabotage is business? You rejected me 15 years ago, built your empire without me. I simply reminded the board that your judgment might be compromised by inappropriate relationships. The pieces clicked into place. Richard had proposed when they were both in their 20s, fresh out of business school. He wanted to merge their companies, create a dynasty. She had said no because she saw what he could not. He wanted Reynolds Industries, not her. The rejection had festered for over a decade. His voice carried bitterness he did not bother hiding. You were supposed to be mine. We were supposed to build something together. You proposed because you wanted my company, not me. I wanted both. You chose Reynolds Industries over everything, over everyone. Kate's voice was ice. I chose myself, something you never understood. And now you're choosing some administrative assistant who can barely afford his rent? Proves my point perfectly. He's worth 10 of you, and I'm done here. She walked out. Richard called after her, but she did not turn around. By the next morning, Kate had contacted Richard's 3 biggest clients, shared the evidence of corporate espionage, existed in a legal gray area, but was damaging enough to raise serious questions about ethics and business practices. 2 clients dropped Morrison and Associates within the week. The company's stock fell 12% in 3 days. Sometimes revenge was just good business. The board meeting was scheduled for January 14th, the day before the engagement announcement gala. All 8 members present. Marcus Whitmore invited as a courtesy the future partner who would help guide Reynolds Industries into new markets. Kate arrived last, laptop in hand, wearing the armor of a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Thomas Hendricks, board chairman, started with pleasantries about the upcoming announcement. The PR director outlined strategy, engagement reveal, merger details, press conference timed for maximum media coverage. Marcus sat at the far end of the table watching Kate with eyes that saw too much. Hendricks turned to her. "Catherine, if you'd like to add anything to the agenda." Kate stood, walked to the head of the table, opened her laptop. The presentation loaded on the screen behind her. Financial projections, market analysis, everything the board wanted to see. Then she closed the laptop. "I'm calling off the engagement." The silence was absolute. Hendricks blinked like he had misheard. "Excuse me?" "The engagement to Marcus Whitmore. I'm canceling it." The room erupted, voices overlapping, confusion bleeding into anger. Board members talking over each other, demanding explanations. Victoria Reynolds appeared on the video screen, her face tight with fury. "Catherine, what are you doing?" Hendricks stood, face red. This partnership was contingent on the marriage, on the merger between families. Without that, there's no deal. I understand." Marcus, who had been silent, finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You're walking away from $500 million. Yes. Because of him? The man from the dinner?" Kate met his eyes across the table. "Because I'm not for sale. I never have been." Marcus nodded slowly, something like approval crossing his face. The board kept arguing. Hendricks pounded the table. "This is career suicide. The stock will tank. Shareholders will demand your resignation." Victoria's voice came through the speakers, shrill and desperate. "Catherine, think about the family legacy. Think about what your grandfather built." Kate's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I have thought about it. For 37 years, I'm done thinking about everyone else." Board member number 4, a man who had never liked Kate taking over from her father, leaned forward. "You're choosing some low-level employee over the company's future?" Something hardened in Kate's expression. "I'm choosing my own future. Something this board has never understood. You want to measure my value by whether I wear a wedding ring? I've increased revenue 340% in 6 years. I've diversified our portfolio, expanded into 3 new markets, and turned this company into an industry leader. But you still think my worth is tied to whether some man will have me?" She picked up her laptop. "I resigned before I compromised my dignity." Hendricks stood. "If you walk out that door, we'll vote you out anyway." Kate paused at the threshold, did not turn around. "Then vote." She walked out. Behind her, chaos. Ahead of her, uncertainty. She kept walking. Elevator, parking garage, car. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. She had just thrown away everything she had built. $500 million, the respect of her board, possibly her position as CEO. Everything. She started driving. Marcus stood in the boardroom after Kate left. Addressed the remaining members with quiet authority. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Reynolds, I believe our business here is concluded." Hendricks sputtered. "Mr. Whitmore, we can salvage this. The merger can proceed without the personal element." "No, thank you. I've seen enough." He left the boardroom. Found Diane Harper in the hallway, leaning against the wall like she had been waiting. She went after him. "Finally." Marcus extended his hand. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Miss Harper." Diane shook it. "You're a good man, Mr. Whitmore. Just someone who remembers what love looks like." 6 hours in a car gave Kate plenty of time to think, to question every decision, to wonder if she had just destroyed her career for someone who might slam the door in her face. The highway stretched through Pennsylvania, winter gray and unforgiving. She called Diane from somewhere past Harrisburg. "I did it." Diane's voice was warm with approval. "And?" "Stock dropped 8% before I hit the highway." "The company will survive. Will you?" "Ask me in 6 hours." Kate arrived in Pittsburgh at the 10 at night. The address from James's HR file led to a small apartment complex in a working-class neighborhood, very different from Manhattan penthouses and doormen and private elevators. She sat in her car for 20 minutes trying to find courage she had never needed in a boardroom. Finally, she got out, walked to apartment 2B, knocked. Mrs. Chen answered, the neighbor from Queens who had somehow ended up helping James move. She looked at Kate with eyes that missed nothing. Can I help you? I'm looking for James Sullivan. Mrs. Chen studied her. You're Kate Reynolds. Not a question. Kate nodded. He's at the school, picking up Liam from aftercare. Be back soon. Can I wait? Mrs. Chen's gaze sharpened. Depends. You here to hurt him again? The words hit like a physical blow. Kate met her eyes. No, I'm here to tell him I love him. Mrs. Chen stepped aside. Then you can wait. Kate sat on the steps outside the apartment. January cold bit through her coat. She did not care. She had waited 10 months for this. 40 minutes was nothing. Headlights swept into the parking lot. James's borrowed car. Liam jumped out first, backpack bouncing. He saw Kate and froze. Miss Kate? He ran to her, threw his arms around her waist. Kate crouched down, hugged him back, felt something break open in her chest. Hi, Liam. He pulled back, eyes wide with hope and confusion. Are you visiting? Are you staying? I need to talk to your dad first. James approached slowly, wary, hurt written across every line of his body. What are you doing here? Kate stood. I needed to see you. Why? To say goodbye properly? Wish me luck in Pittsburgh? No. Then what? Liam looked between them, sensing the tension. Kate kept her eyes on James. Can we talk? Privately? James turned to Mrs. Chen, who had appeared in the doorway. Can you take Liam inside? She nodded. Come on, sweetheart. Let's make hot chocolate. But with marshmallows. Liam followed reluctantly, looking back at Kate like she might disappear if he took his eyes off her. The parking lot felt too exposed, too cold, but neither of them moved. James's voice was rough with anger and pain. You drove 6 hours to what? Ease your conscience? I drove 6 hours to tell you I called off the engagement. James went still. What? This afternoon, board meeting. I told them no. Why would you? He stopped, shook his head like he could deny what she was saying. You lost a $500 million deal. Yes. Your board must be furious, threatening to vote me out. Stock dropped 8%. Kate, you can't. I already did. He stared at her like she was speaking a language he did not understand. You're going to regret this. 6 months from now, a year from now, you'll wake up and realize you threw away everything for someone who can't give you anything. Her voice was steady, certain in ways she had not been certain about anything in months. For what? For you? For a chance at something real? For happiness? I'll take that regret over spending the rest of my life wondering what I was too scared to reach for. I'm not worth that. Yes, you are. I'm an administrative assistant with a GDE and an 8-year-old son and nothing to offer someone like you. She stepped closer, closing the distance he tried to maintain. You offer me everything that matters. Which is what? What could I possibly give you that you need? The words came from somewhere deep and honest, from a place she had kept locked for so long she had forgotten it existed. You see me, not the CEO, not the Reynolds heiress, not the business asset that needs to be leveraged for maximum shareholder value. Just me. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know what it's worth? James's defenses cracked. I'm scared. His voice was barely above a whisper. Kate took his hand. Of what? That I'll drag you down, that your family will never accept me, that the board will force you out and you'll resent me for it. His voice broke. That Liam will get attached and you'll realize this was a mistake and leave and break his heart. That I'm not enough. That I'll never be enough. Kate's grip tightened on his hand. Then let's be scared together. I don't have answers. I don't know what the board will do. I don't know if my mother will ever accept this. But I know I love you. And I know Liam is incredible. And I know I'd rather be terrified with you than safe with someone who makes me feel nothing. James closed his eyes. Tears slid down his face and he did not bother hiding them. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out. He opened his eyes, looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. like he was allowing himself to believe. You really drove 6 hours? Yes. In January? Yes. You're insane. Probably. His voice was rough with emotion. I love you. I love you too. He kissed her, soft and unhurried, like they had all the time in the world instead of standing in a frozen parking lot in Pittsburgh with their futures uncertain. The first real kiss that was not for cameras or contracts or anything except the truth they had been running from for months. The window above them opened. Liam's voice rang out, excited and hopeful. Does this mean Miss Kate is staying? They broke apart, both laughing. James called it up. Yeah, buddy. She's staying. Can we have pancakes? Kate looked at her watch. It's 11 at night. Pancakes don't have bedtime. James looked at her, something like wonder in his eyes. He makes a good point. Pancakes it is. They walked inside together, Liam bouncing between them with questions and excitement. Mrs. Chen smiled from the kitchen, already pulling out mixing bowls. Kate took off her coat, rolled up her sleeves, and helped James crack eggs while Liam measured flour with intense concentration. It was not the life she had planned, not the future her board wanted, or her mother expected, or anyone would have predicted. It was better. 1 year later, Kate stood in the kitchen of a Brooklyn brownstone, cutting fruit while James made coffee. January 15th, the anniversary of the day she walked out of that board meeting. The day everything changed. Reynolds Industries had survived. The stock recovered over 9 months as Kate secured 4 smaller partnerships instead of one massive deal. Diversification made the company stronger, more resilient. The board grudgingly admitted she had been right, though Thomas Hendricks still looked at her like she had committed professional suicide. Diane Harper was now COO. Kate's mother came around slowly. Christmas dinner had been awkward but civil. Victoria could not argue with how happy her daughter looked, and Liam had charmed her with enthusiastic explanations of Mars rover mechanics. James had returned to New York after 3 months. Kate created a position, Regional Operations Director, that he earned by streamlining the Pittsburgh office and saving the company $200,000 in operating costs, $95,000 a year, an office on the 15th floor, not charity, respect. The brownstone had 4 bedrooms and a backyard where Liam could play. Normal neighborhood, normal life. 15 minutes to the office on the subway. Liam, now 9 and in 4th grade, sat at the kitchen table working on a science project about planetary atmospheres. He looked up from his notes. When are you going to marry Dad? Kate and James exchanged glances. This was the 3rd time this month he had asked. When it's the right time, buddy. That's what you said last month. They were in no rush, living together, building something real, letting it grow without pressure or timelines or anyone else's expectations. Marcus Whitmore had become a friend. VentureSphere and Reynolds Industries collaborated on a smaller tech project that benefited both companies. He visited occasionally, brought Liam science kits, started dating an art gallery owner in Chelsea. He told James once, over coffee, that he was glad Kate chose him. Richard Morrison sold his company and retired to Florida. Kate never thought about him. James stood in front of the mirror that afternoon, preparing for a charity event. His tie was crooked, still terrible at them after all this time. Kate walked up behind him, took the tie from his hands, fixed it with practiced efficiency. He watched her in the mirror, and his breathing changed, not nervous, not anxious, just present, just grateful. She finished, stepped back, met his eyes in the reflection, raised one eyebrow with a small smile. Why are you breathing like that? James turned to face her, pulled her close. Because every time I look at you, I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. They kissed, familiar, home, everything that mattered. Liam's voice cut through the moment. Can we go to the museum now? They had promised to take him to the Natural History Museum, then lunch at his favorite pizza place, normal Saturday in Brooklyn. James called back. Yeah, let's go see some dinosaurs. Kate grabbed her coat. And then lunch at your favorite place. Pizza. Always pizza. The 3 of them walked out together, Liam between them holding both their hands, talking about T-Rex bone structures and meteor impacts. Neighbors waved, they waved back. Just another family in Brooklyn. Nothing extraordinary to anyone watching. Everything extraordinary to them. Kate thought about what she had given up. $500 million. The merger that would have defined her career, the approval of people who measured worth in stock prices and quarterly earnings. She looked at James and Liam laughing together over some joke she had missed, and the math was simple. Best investment she ever made. Later that evening, after the museum and pizza and Liam's bedtime, Kate and James sat on the couch in the quiet house, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest. The city hummed beyond the windows, but inside was peace. James's voice was soft in the darkness. A year ago, I was planning to run, get as far from you as possible. And now? Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. She tilted her head to look at him. No regrets? He thought about it seriously because she deserved honesty. Sometimes I worry I'm not enough, that you gave up too much, that one day you'll wake up and wish you'd chosen differently. Well, Kate sat up, turned to face him fully, took his face in her hands. Listen to me. Every day I wake up next to you is a day I chose exactly right. Every morning I make pancakes with Liam is a morning I'm grateful I was brave enough to walk away from what everyone else wanted. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me a life I actually want to live. His eyes were wet. I love you. I love you too. Upstairs, Liam called out, something about homework he forgot to mention. They both laughed, the moment broken but not lost. James stood, offered her his hand. Duty calls. Always. They climbed the stairs together, went to help their son with whatever crisis required parental intervention. Normal evening, normal problems, normal life that felt extraordinary because it was theirs. In the morning, Kate would go to her office and navigate board politics and shareholder concerns. James would coordinate regional operations and prove himself valuable beyond anyone's initial expectations. Liam would go to school and tell his friends about the museum and dream about Mars. But tonight, they were just a family in Brooklyn, making it work, making it real, making it enough. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was choose happiness over expectations, choose love over logic, choose the person who saw you over the person who saw your title. Kate had spent 37 years being what everyone else needed. She spent the next 37 years being what she needed. And every morning when she woke up next to James, every evening when they made dinner together, every moment Liam called her Kate instead of Miss Reynolds. Those were the moments she knew she had chosen right. Not because it was easy, because it was real. And real, she had learned, was worth more than any merger, any board approval, any amount of money could ever buy.